up, entertainment intellectual property attorney Stephanie Hay here, and we are back with another installment of our trademark series called S.C.R.E.M. We have talked about selection and we have talked about clearance. So if you have not watched those videos, go back, take a look at those videos, catch up, and then come back to this one, okay? So next is registration. What's important about registration? First, we want to talk about where to file. Where should you file your mark? Registration can be filed in the U.S. through the Federal Trademark Office, but it can also be filed in other places. Now, is it necessary for you to file in other places? It may or may not be. It depends on the scope of your mark, where you intend to sell. So some things you want to think of is piracy. Do you want to file in places where piracy is high and it's not protected? Because of course, the United States Patent and Trademark Office is only protecting your mark in the United States. So it is not protected, nationally. It is not protected worldwide. It is only protected in the US. So if places of piracy, you feel like your brand may reach those places, those are the places you want to trademark. So for instance, China, if you're doing a clothing line and it may reach there, you may want to think about looking into filing in not just the United States, but also in China. In places where you honestly just might be bothered by the fact that somebody else may be using your brand in that particular region, you want to file there. You want to file in places where your goods may be manufactured. So if you're not manufacturing your goods in the United States and they may be manufactured in Turkey, you want to register there because of course it's more likely to be infringed upon in the place in which it's actually being manufactured. So you want to look into registering your mark in that place as well. And finally, where you're expecting to sell. So if you're a US based company, but you're also planning to sell in, for instance, let's say Mexico, you want to register your mark in Mexico because that is also where your brand will be exposed, and exposure creates the potential for infringement. So looking at registering in those places. So those are the places where you want to register, and a part of that registration, going back to our clearance video, you're also going to want to get your report to clear those particular countries as well. Through that clearance report, you can attach the different countries that you also want to have trademarks protected, at least so you know moving forward if it's available in that particular country. And if it is, then after you file your US registration, you can move forward and filing in those other countries, or at least exploring what that option looks like once you've gotten that report and you know it's potentially available. Also noting there, if it's available in the US, it may not be available in some of the other countries. So using that trademark clearance report will help you to make that determination ahead of time. So if you want to change it in the US so that it's succinct across the other in the other countries that you are looking to explore, you can do that prior to registration. So that may be also just kind of like a little bonus tip of things that you want to explore when you're talking about where you should register your mark, okay? Next, let's talk about the benefits of registration. A, is going to validate that you are the owner. The trademark office is going to presume that you are the owner against somebody else that comes in and says that you've infringed against them. But by not registering, you don't get that presumption. So you want to go ahead and register because then the ball is in their court to defend and say, okay, like, no, this is my mark, versus now you and this person going at it about the mark. So it gives you that presumption that the mark is yours. Next, you have national rights that come along. National, when I say national within the US, you have rights that come along with being able to say you have a federally registered trademark that you do not have per se when you're talking about an unregistered work, okay? Next, you get notice of ownership. You get to use the trademark symbols. Note that TM, of course, means that it's a pending registration. It's not yet registered, but they have the intent to register it, or the registration process has already taken place, or is in the application has been filed essentially. Versus if you're using the R with the circle around it, that means it's actually been registered and you have the right to use that symbol in conjunction with your particular mark. Make sense? And then finally, you get protections from U.S. Customs. So once you have a registered mark, you can file with U.S. Customs to let them know you have a registered mark. So for instance, if we're on the border of Mexico and they see something coming through that may look like infringed materials, guess what? They're going to prevent it from coming through because A, you've proven that you have a registered mark and you notified them of said mark to prevent counterfeit materials from coming over, let's say from Mexico to the U.S. as a result of your registered mark. So those are just some of the benefits of getting getting your mark registered with the trademark office ahead of time before you start actually putting your products or services out to the consumer, okay? So let's talk about the filing procedures. So when you're looking to file your application, it goes into almost like it's a four-part process. So first you want to select your application. And selecting your application, there are two types of applications you can select from. There's an in-use application and an intent to use application. Very obvious in a sense of what they mean. In use means, hey, I'm a service or a product provider and my stuff is already out here in commerce. People are already purchasing my services or they're already purchasing my goods and I want to register the mark so nobody else can use it. Versus an in-use application is when you're saying to the trademark office, I intend at some point in the near future to provide these goods or services to the marketplace. And in the midst of me collecting my data, getting my production together, I want to register my mark ahead of schedule so that when we're ready to go to market, our mark is already protected. So through the trademark office, when you go to apply, you have to select which application you're applying for. Are you applying for the in-use application or are you applying for the intent to use application? Hey, what's up? Entertainment attorney Stephanie Hay here. And if you are enjoying the content, please like, share, and subscribe. If you are gatekeeping the content, don't do that. Your friends deserve to know the same information you do. Like, sharing is caring. Like, share, subscribe. Bye. Next, after you decide which application you're going to apply for, you're going to fill out your application. You're going to have to select which classes your mark fall under. We'll talk about classes in another video, but just note within that application, you have to determine which class your particular good or service falls under in order to complete your application. Once your application is complete, it will be sent to an examining attorney. The trademark examining attorney at this rate right now in the current market, it's taking about 6 to 9 months to review applications. Honestly, during the pandemic, it was more like 9 to 12 months. They've kind of backed that timeline up, but just know once your application is filed, it is going to sit for a good hot minute before it is touched and before an examining attorney has an opportunity to review it and validate that it, meets the formalities of registration, that there are no conflicts, and that the application is or is not good to move forward, okay? And now, in a perfect world, after the examining attorney has an opportunity to review the application and they give it the green light that, nothing's wrong with it, there are no conflicting marks, all your formalities are taken care of, your address is correct, LLC information is there, ownership information is correct, all of those little small things are done, as well as making sure there's no conflict with another registered, potentially registered mark. They're going to move you into the next phase. The next phase, we call that publication. In the publication phase, your mark goes to the Trademark Gazette and it sits basically like on the open market for 30 days. It's almost like a newspaper where people can come in and say, well, no, I don't believe, Johnny's registration should be validated. And here's my reason why. And so with that, it sits there for 30 days and gives basically the public an opportunity to object to the registration and provide said reasons. If no one opposes your publication, you will go to registration. With registration, you will receive a registration certificate, and now you have an actual valid trademark registered mark with the United States Patent and Trademark Office that you can proudly hang on your wall. Next, let's talk about the different notices that you may receive from the trademark office through the application process as your application is being processed and being looked at by the examining attorney. First, let's talk about the notice of allowance. This one is a big one because as I previously mentioned, when we start talking about you getting your registration certificate, if you filed an in-use application, you will receive the notice of allowance. Alternatively, if you filed an intent to use application. So after publication, you will receive a notice of allowance letter, which basically explains like, hey, we believe your mark is good for registration. However, we need to see proof of use. We need to see that you are actually using the mark in commerce. So they will issue you a notice of allowance. With that notice of allowance, it's basically saying we'll give you that registration certificate that you so desire once we know you're actually using the mark in commerce. With that notice, you'll have 6 months from the date to file a proof of use statement. Within that 6 months, they're giving you an opportunity to do everything you need to do in order to get the mark off the ground and into commerce. When it's time to actually file your proof of use statement, you'll actually have an additional filing fee, which right now, as of this recording, is about $100 to file your statement of use to prove that the trademark is actually in commerce. Once you make that filing, the examining attorney will review your proof of use, and if it's a valid proof of use, meaning they actually it meets the requirements for proof of use in commerce, then you will receive your registration certificate showing that you have a valid trademark. Your statement of use notice. Your statement of use notice is with your notice of allowance. When it's time to file a statement of use, your 6 months have passed, as we previously discussed, and now it's time to determine and show the trademark office you're actually using the mark in commerce. And that's when you're going to file your statement of use. And with that statement of use, you'll get the notice saying, okay, you file the statement of use showing it's in commerce, and you're waiting on them to approve said use for your particular mark. And it's essentially just proof that you're using it proper. Okay. Another type of notice that you may receive is the notice of approval of an extension. The trademark office allows, once you get that notice of allowance showing or giving you the opportunity to provide proof of use, you can file an extension up to 5 times. Each extension is for 6 months. So you can file it up to 5 times, telling the office like, hey, I still intend to bring the mark to commerce. I just haven't gotten there yet. I may have some manufacturing issues, some product development issues, research and development issues. You can have all of these things happening, and they're giving you the grace to be able to do it. But you only can do it 5 times, and you get a 6-month window. Every 6 months, you have to send in a renewal notice, or you have to request an extension. So note, in doing that, that may end up being costly as you're trying to get your mark into commerce. So I would suggest, as a just pro tip, if you're using an intent to use application, make sure that you genuinely are ready to bring that mark into commerce within a relatively, let's say within a year or so, or you're filing a $125 fee every 6 months for you to maintain that particular standing for the notice of allowance in order for you to register at some point. So just note, you can file an extension. They allow up to 5 extensions, but in those extensions, you must file a filing fee, and you may incur additional attorney fees. So just keep that in mind in determining if you want to use an intent to use application or an in-use application, depending on where you are and the development production of your particular good or, service. Okay. And then finally, another notice that you should be aware of is our office actions. Office actions are non-final office actions and final office actions. These office actions can range in what they're requesting and what they're saying. Some office actions are simply just, the names that match up, the registration of a company didn't match up in their system. So they're requesting that you change that. The address of something didn't match up. So they're requesting that those changes be made in the application, versus something that may be more severe, which is like likelihood of confusion issues, where they believe that your mark is similar to a mark that's already registered, so it could bring confusion, and so they're denying the application because of that. In non-final office actions, you have an opportunity to respond to the trademark office in a timely fashion. They will tell you how long you have to respond. On some of the non-critical issues, it may be 3 months. Let's say it's an address change or something to that effect, versus when it's a likelihood of confusion matter, they may give you up to 6 months to respond. You can continue to respond to the office actions until you get a final office action. Once you get that final office action, you have the opportunity to respond one more time. But essentially, the trademark office is saying this is our final decision, and you can kind of take it or leave it unless you want to appeal the decision. Okay. So those are all of the notices that you need to be aware of when you're dealing with the trademark office and through that registration and application process. Now, big ticket item is fees. Everybody wants to know, how much is it going to cost me? The United States Patent and Trademark Office publishes their fees on their website. So if you're doing an electronic application, what we call a TISLA Plus application, that application fee is going to be $250 as the date of this recording. If you're going to do an electronic standard TISLA application, that application is going to be $350. And I know you're saying, Stephanie, well, they're both electronic, so what is the true difference here? Well, with the TISLA Plus application, you are identifying your classes within your application using what we consider the trademark ID manual, versus if you are not doing that in your application or you've done it wrong, most likely you will go to the standard electronic application, which requires that additional $100. So as of this recording, I think it's about $350. So those are the application fees, but also keep in mind, you'll have your application fees, and those fees are per class. So if you are registering in multiple classes, that fee will double every time. So if you have 3 classes, it'll be $250 times 3, as well as your trademark report fee. That will be an additional cost as well. And then, of course, if you're utilizing an attorney, which I highly recommend, you'll have your attorney's fees as well. So keep those in mind when you start trying to budget accordingly for the filing of your trademark application, okay? Well, I hope that helps. That ends our registration video for our trademark series. Hit the link in my bio for a free 10-minute consultation. I hope you liked. Please like, share, and subscribe. Y'all have a good day.